Hello, Professor.
Hello there. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
Good evening to all of you.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Greetings from London.
Yeah. Greetings from Warsaw too.
Hi there.
How is the weather in London?
Oh, beautiful. I mean, the weather's not a problem. Only this disease is a problem.
Yeah, yeah. You are in difficult situation because you have, first of all, you have disease, and second disease is Brexit.
Oh, thank goodness. One of the only advantage of this disease is I haven't heard the word Brexit for several weeks, so that has been very good.
Okay, so we have 2 minutes to start.
Lovely.
I think that attendees will come for a time. So everything will looks like that me and Pavel will start.
Lovely.
Then Professor Prokop will say a few words.
Hello.
You, sir? And then we started from Polish, okay? Is it okay for you?
No problem. No problem.
Okay. And then we switch into English. Your presentation will be in English, and
Sure.
there will be a short Q&A session. Okay.
Very good. Can I ask something? Do you want me to share? I've got slides which I can share or not,
Yeah.
entirely as you like.
Yeah. We prefer to share slides because it's okay. You can do it. So
Fine.
It's absolutely okay.
So I've got, I'll put share screen. I'll use it to while sharing the screen, and then I'll simply put the slides up.
Okay, we can check now. Is it works or not?
Okay, let's have a go. How does that feel? Is that anything?
We see your slides.
Yes. Good.
Okay, everything is working.
Lovely.
Great.
Good. Okay, fine. So I'll get rid of this.
Okay.
Get rid of this.
So now you have to.
Yes, I'll get rid of it. Don't worry, it's going.
Okay.
It's gone.
And if you could now don't share, because we would like to.
No, exactly. No, I'll put it on when I start.
Okay, great. So we have the time is now, so maybe Pavel, let's your microphone go, and we will start in Polish. Witamy wszystkich. Dzień dobry wszystkim. Mamy nadzieję, że będzie się powiększała grupa ludzi, która będzie uczestniczyła w całym spotkaniu. Widzimy, że coraz więcej i więcej osób jest. Może zaczniemy. Ja powiem parę słów. Najpierw chciałem bardzo podziękować Pawłowi, bo to jego wielka inicjatywa. To on sobie wymyślił, że wykorzystamy to, że mnóstwo ludzi w tej chwili siedzi przed komputerami i być może można poprosić takich, o których zawsze myśleliśmy, że są naszymi guru, są naszymi autorytetami, o to, żeby podzielili się z nami wiedzą. I okazało się, że jak Paweł zaczął do nich pisać, to bardzo dużo osób się na to zgodziło i za to jestem wdzięczny. No i poszliśmy za ciosem, obaj zaczęliśmy promować ten program. Oprócz tego włączył się cały nasz zespół właściwie z Agencji Rozwoju Przemysłu. Bardzo mocno włączył się w to Marcin Jarzynowski, bardzo mocno włączył się Michał Saczuk i wszystkim Wam chciałem bardzo, bardzo podziękować. Chcieliśmy też podziękować tym osobom, które z nami występują. Powiem żartem, że Sir Andrew Likierman jest pierwszą osobą, do której po angielsku mogę mówić sir, i to jest naprawdę to, o co chodzi. Do tej pory mówiłem jest sir, ale tylko dlatego, że to chodziło o mężczyznę. Szanowni Państwo, dzisiaj mamy szansę naprawdę usłyszeć rewelacyjną prezentację, nie boję się tego słowa, ponieważ jest to bardzo, bardzo mądry człowiek, jeden z najmądrzejszych, jakich można spotkać pewnie teraz na kuli ziemskiej. Jesteśmy niezmiernie dumni z tego, że postanowił on się z nami podzielić tym, co wie na temat podejmowania decyzji podczas czasu koronawirusa. Teraz oddam głos Pawłowi. Pawle, the floor is yours.
Bardzo dziękuję. To ogromna przyjemność znaleźć się w takim gronie, chociażby na ekranie. Więc to od tego zacznę i bardzo chciałem podziękować obu panom, profesorom, za to, że dzisiejsze spotkanie możemy w panów towarzystwie spędzić ten wieczór. Takich wieczorów będziemy mieć znacznie więcej, bo ten nasz cykl zaplanowaliśmy na co najmniej 2 miesiące. Więc mamy nasz kalendarz obejmuje na początku pierwszych 8 spotkań. Chcemy spotykać się z Państwem 2 razy w tygodniu, w środę o godzinie 20, zazwyczaj tak będzie, i w sobotę o 21:30. Więc już po zakończeniu pracy, kiedy jesteśmy w domu i nasze głowy mogą troszkę odpocząć, wtedy to najlepszy czas na spotkanie tych wybitnych umysłów, innowatorów, myślicieli, praktyków, teoretyków biznesu. Zazwyczaj dlatego, że czasami będą zdarzały się wyjątki, ale staramy się trzymać tego harmonogramu. I może pokrótce powiem o kilku tych najbliższych spotkaniach. 7 maja, czyli akurat nie w środę, a w czwartek o godzinie 20 spotkamy się z doktorem Lukiem Julią, który jest wiceprezesem do spraw innowacji w Samsungu. W sobotę, następną sobotę to będzie 9 maja, Pete Warden, prezes Breakthrough Foundation, czyli takiej fundacji, która przyznaje te takie amerykańskie Noble, a wcześniej wieloletni dyrektor jednego z centrów NASA Ames. I kolejne spotkanie profesor Yves Pinie, to będzie 13 maja. Cały ten harmonogram, wszystkie te znakomite nazwiska znajdziecie Państwo na stronie weinnovators-club. Mam nadzieję, że to grono tych wybitnych naukowców i praktyków biznesu będzie się powiększało. Na razie chcemy opowiedzieć o tym, jaka jest ta lista na najbliższe kilka spotkań, a sukcesywnie będziemy kolejne informacje Państwu przekazywali wtedy, kiedy już dogadamy wszystkie sprawy techniczne, kiedy potwierdzimy dokładnie godziny. Na razie jest to pierwszych 8 spotkań. Zapraszam na stronę, żeby wszystkiego już dzisiaj nie opowiedzieć i troszkę Państwa zachęcić do tego, żeby tą stronę odwiedzać. I cóż, chyba oddamy głos naszym głównym bohaterom dzisiejszego spotkania. Najpierw
ja mam jeszcze jedną rzecz, przepraszam.
Tak?
Ja mam jeszcze do pokazania czołówkę naszego spotkania.
Pewnie.
To jest nowa rzecz, zaraz spróbuję ją otworzyć. To nie jest takie bardzo proste.
Bartosz, jeszcze może podziękujmy właśnie 2 instytucjom, które nas bardzo wsparły przy organizacji tego dzisiejszego spotkania, czyli Szkole Głównej Handlowej, która objęła patronatem ten nasz webinar, i panu rektorowi Jackowi Prokopowi oraz ambasadzie Wielkiej Brytanii w Polsce.
Oczywiście. To mi nie pozostaje nic innego, jak puścić teraz czołówkę naszej imprezy, a Państwa zaprosić za chwilę do posłuchania 2 profesorów. So, Professor Jacku Prokop, the floor is yours.
Okay, so thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, so it is my great honor and true privilege to welcome all participants and especially our honorary guest, Sir Andrew Likierman, Professor of London Business School and former Dean for many years. Warsaw School of Economics is really very proud to be part of that webinar to organize this session. We are well known for shaping leaders. That's our main call of our school. Many of our alumni have been the leaders in business or politics, even in the current one. So I'm really proud to be part of tonight's event. It is hard not to notice that we all live in a turbulent environment in which we all face many challenges. Those challenges could be characterized as abrupt, deep, and hard to predict. The traditional approach to strategic planning finds it difficult to deal with problems created under current circumstances. There has always been a need for enlightened management and leadership. And now, at the time of coronavirus global crisis, such need for enlightened leadership is stronger than ever before. In the short run, entrepreneurs should demonstrate agility in creating tactical plans. But for the longer perspective and for strategic planning, the existence of leaders with ability to make the right decisions is crucial for survival and prosperity of firms. So tonight we host a distinguished guest, Sir Andrew Likierman, who, as I mentioned, is Professor of Management Practice at London Business School. And Professor Likierman is an author of a recent article published in the Harvard Business Review. That article focuses on the role of judgment in management. At this webinar, we hope that Professor Likierman will share with us the results of his research on the factors contributing to a good judgment and its use in managerial decision-making. So now, without much overdue, I will give the floor to Professor Likierman, and after this, as it was announced, we will have presentation. We will have questions Q&A session. Professor Likierman, the floor is yours, sir. Please unmute your microphone.
It's difficult to get heard if you have a mute microphone. That is certainly true in any language. Anyway, I should say dobry wieczór, first of all. I should also say, and I don't think the organizers of this event realized it, but my father was born in Łódź. Okay, so I do have a connection to Poland. Anyway, so thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for the chance to make this presentation. What I want to do is to share with you, if I may, the results of the work I've been doing, first of all on judgment more generally, but I'm going to apply it tonight to the current crisis, because I think we're all very interested to know, how do we make difficult choices in this current crisis? We are faced with circumstances which none of us, I think, have faced before in quite this way. And so what I'd like to try and do is apply the framework which I've been developing over the last few years for making difficult choices in management to the current crisis, and to think about, perhaps I hope, to help those who are with us tonight in the choices that they have to make. Now, I'm going to share my screen, if I may, with you. Is that, can I just check? Can you see that? Can you see my slide there?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, fine, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, So, and I'm very happy I can make these slides available afterwards for anybody who wants them. I'm no problem at all to do that. All right, so what I assume is that everybody is faced with some very difficult issues. In an organization, the question is, how does one plan? How does one not run out of money? What happens if one's missing key colleagues who may be ill? What can one assume, not just about what one does, but also about the people on whom one relies for supplies and so on? And on personal grounds, obviously there are personal issues here about the kind of personal risks one takes. So these are the kinds of issues that I've been looking at and would like to share with you. So before I start, I just wanted to say a little bit about what I mean by judgment. I'm assuming here that I'm going to talk about judgment as if it's good judgment, but actually, of course, like any other quality, it can go between bad and good, and there are many grades in between. I'm not suggesting tonight that this is the only thing that matters. I know many other qualities matter, but this is a quality which I believe is particularly important in making difficult choices. And what I'm going to talk about is not a blueprint, this you do 1, 2, 3, this is what you do. I'm hoping that it's going to be useful as a guide to help in choice making. And I also know that everybody on this call has different personal circumstances and different professional circumstances, and we're all going to approach this in different ways. So this is about how you approach choices. I obviously can't say this is what you should do, because it depends so much on individual circumstances, what people should do. So this is about how to approach and not what exactly to do in every circumstance. Let me go on to the question of what is this quality judgment? And I've described it as the combination of personal qualities, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment, personal qualities with the relevant knowledge and experience which goes to form an opinion or take a decision. So this is my definition of what I'm talking about this evening. And just to be clear then about what those personal qualities are, here you can see they involve things like wisdom and intelligence and intuition and reason and experience and insight, perceptiveness. Many of these things go together to make up judgment. This is not about being judgmental, and I'm sorry, forgive me, it's easier for me because obviously I'm speaking my native language, but judgmental in English, for those who don't know, means saying that somebody ought to do something. This is not about that. This is about the way one approaches things, not saying this is what you should do. It includes values within this process. And it's not about just being cautious and saying, I won't take any decisions, because bluntly, taking no decision is often taking a decision. And so that's, it's not about like that. I think that we need judgment now because this is very unfamiliar for all of us. A month ago, we knew almost nothing about this. We know a little bit more now. In 3 months, we will know more again. And in 2 years, we will know a great deal. But we do not have relevant facts and data at the moment to help us make choices. And so we have to rely on judgment. Just to be clear, the work I've done is necessary because you cannot say, well, look, let's just look at success. Success must be a measure of judgment. It isn't a measure of judgment because success depends in many ways on luck. Luck is a major contributory factor to success. We may feel this is all about us, but actually we all benefit from having luck, some luck on our side, and some factors outside our control. We also may decide that we are going to take a risk and the risk may not come off. That doesn't mean to say we haven't made a good judgment. It simply means we have recognized that in taking a risk, there is a possibility of failure. Sometimes also it's difficult to know about whether a success is due to judgment because the information may be manipulated. I mean, I'm not saying this is always so, but information is not always neutral. So these are the kinds of reasons why one can't simply say, all right, so what is success? And therefore we'll trace back judgment to that. It's not possible to do that. This is the model that I used in my article. And if anybody would like to know more about this, there is more in the article than I can talk about this evening. So any judgment involves 6 elements, and these are the 6. It's about your ability to take things in. That's to say, what you see and what you hear and what you read. And not everybody takes in things very well. Some people do this better than others, and I'll say more about that. Then there's the question of who you trust. You rely on people and you rely on information, for example, from media and the social media and so on. And judgment is also knowing who and what one can trust. Then there's the question of what one knows about this particular thing that one's looking at. One may know about many things in life, but when you're making a judgment, it's about this choice now. And the question is, how much does one know now about this? That is the third element of judgment that's relevant. Number 4 is what you feel and you believe. And I'll say more about that. We start out with a lot of feelings and with a lot of biases. We don't approach things neutrally. We also approach things with an idea of how much risk we are prepared to take. The 5th element is about the choice. That's to say, in bringing all this together, how then does one make the choice? Is the quality of the decision-making good? And that includes, for example, the timing. Is now the right time to do something, or should I wait? And then finally, it's the question, can one deliver? Is it possible, having made a choice, to say, well, we'll put this into action? Is this feasible? These are the 6 elements that I have talked about in terms of what goes into a good judgment. And if I then apply this to this particular virus and the situation, looking at number 1, there is a danger that we filter things out, we are anxious, we don't take in information because we don't want to take in certain kind of information, for example. In terms of trust, we know that all the information which is available is not always reliable. And the question then is, what do we really know about the information that we're getting? There's the question of what we know now. And I mentioned before that we learn more about this virus every day, and we therefore may know more about what to do as time goes on. In terms of feelings and beliefs, many of us are optimists, some of us are pessimists. We approach this with not a neutral mind. We have a mind which has feelings and views about things, and we have to recognize that may well filter what we take in about this crisis. In terms of choices, we know that if we take a decision tomorrow, it'll probably be better informed than a decision today. But on the other hand, we may not be able to wait. I'll talk more about that in a moment. And finally, delivery. This depends not just on us, it depends on other people as well. How are other people going to be able to do things? If necessary, if we need them to do something and then they can't do it, they're not there and available for us. So this is the kind of environment in which we take decisions in this crisis. I mentioned biases, and those of you who have done psychology and looked at the psychology literature will know there is a lot which we now know about the way in which we approach problems. And for example, these are some of the biases, and I've marked some in red, which may affect us in this crisis. For example, I've mentioned already our optimism or our pessimism. Analogy, we may say, well, is this like the financial crisis? Is this like SARS in 2003? Well, no, it's not like those. But of course, we like to draw analogies to say, let's see if we can put this in some kind of perspective. Confirmation bias is looking for things that we want to look for. We get a piece of news and it's cheerful and we say, oh yes, we believe this because it accords with what we already feel. And confirmation bias is tending to go for things we want to believe. Availability is the case where one looks at the latest piece of information and gives undue weight to that. Groupthink is when everybody in a group together wants to believe something and they persuade each other that it's so. And small numbers means that we don't have many cases, and so we go for the very few which are available. So this is the basis of the model and how it applies in this situation. Let me now move to this particular problem we've got of this virus, of how we deal with it. And I believe, for example, that using judgment is applicable in, a number of I put everything beginning with P here, but this is just playing really. We need to know about people, about whether we trust people, about whether we believe them, about whether we can rely on them. We need to know in this situation, if we're outside our normal work environment and what we do, what are our priorities now? How do we decide to do one thing and not another, including if we're working from home? Our plans and our strategy are very much informed by judgment, because we probably have to make new plans that we weren't expecting to make 2 months ago. Projects which we have, a number of people I'm sure on the call tonight will have projects that they want to complete. So what happens to these projects in this situation? In terms of performance measures, we may feel, all right, well, we have performance measures about at work, what we're seeking to do. We may have to have new performance measures. We may just have survival as a performance measure. And we also need, in thinking about the future, about what happens about the world into which we go after this virus has gone and we go back to a more normal environment. But perhaps it won't be quite so normal. Let me then take each of these 6 and think about it in relation to the situation we're in now. So in terms of what I take in, the danger is that one is too rigid in thinking. One hangs on to models that one believes are comforting, because this new world is not very comforting. And it may be that we have to let go of models that we had in our mind in the past and think about, well, maybe things are not quite going to be what they were before. And the question here is, are you taking in enough from what is going on? You have also to be aware of the fact that there's shifts in mood over time. I'll just give you one example. I'm on the remuneration committee of a company, and we fix, therefore, the pay of the senior management of that company. Now, over the last 2 or 3 weeks, there has been a move to stop executives getting pay rises, or even perhaps getting their full pay if workers have been laid off, things like that. And so that is a kind of important shift. It's no use saying, well, we'll just ignore that. This is not a question of saying, I'll ignore things. Actually, what one's got to do is to be very aware of the fact that one can't ignore what's going on in the public mood. And indeed, that the fact there is a lot more knowledge around. This is another area. The switch to recovery. So we will have a stage where we will stop being where we are now and moving into a recovery phase. We have to decide are we taking in the right signals to know when to make that switch? And I'm saying personally, in the kind of personal decisions one takes, I think one has to be aware that one's personal feelings about optimism or fear can be barriers to what you take in. So that's number one. Number two is what and who I trust. So here, what I'm saying is, I think that one needs to discuss what it is one takes in and believes with others, if possible, because the danger is if one's isolated and one starts to build up an idea of something, that may be dangerous. And I think it's good an idea to keep on discussing things with other people. One also has to earn the trust of others in this situation, and to make sure through one's behavior that people rely on your judgment because they trust you. Information which comes in may not always be very accurate. I think one needs to make sure one's reviewing information that's coming in to make sure that it's going to be accurate and that actually one believes that information, because information flows are being disrupted from the norm at the moment. The last one in this is, if there's devolved responsibility, that's a responsibility is given to other people, you have to make sure that that trust is being earned, because again, in these very unusual situations, it may not be clear. Personally, I think here one needs to know why you rely on somebody, not just that you do rely on it, just to make sure that you've got the basis for relying on somebody which is solid and not just based on your hope that you can rely on somebody. Number three, what I know about this, my suggestion here is to look at what other people are doing. This is an extraordinary situation in that the whole world in some way is in the same situation. And therefore, you don't have to find the answers to every problem. Other people have been doing a lot of thinking about this. And my suggestion is look at what other people are doing in many, many different areas. In terms of knowing, I think you need to look, if somebody says to you, this is what we should do, look for the missing evidence. Look for things that are missing, not just what's there. Computer models, interestingly, rely in most cases on situations which are not like now. And I think we have many situations in which computer models have been based on assumptions that are no longer valid. I mean, people talk, for example, about a slump after we come out of this of a huge proportion. Now, frankly, that slump is not going to be factored into any computer model. I know that. We have to identify the trigger points when we have to move from one situation to the other. And I think in terms of personally, if you think about personal choices here, one thinks, who has got experience which is relevant to this that I can talk about? Number four, what I feel and believe. Now here, I think one has to identify how much risk am I prepared to take? Because actions one takes now are going to be risky. And one needs to know how much risk you're prepared to take. I mean, I just give an example. You know, you go out at the moment in the street. I don't know what the situation is in Poland. You can go out in the street in the UK. You know, you can go into situations that are more and less risky. You've got to decide personally how much choice you make on that. In terms of one's professional life, I think you have to understand, you know, what is necessary to make sure not just that one is going to be okay on this, but one can survive at all. And that obviously includes issues of financing. If people talk to you about what's happening, I think you should ask where necessary to get them to make their assumptions clear. Why are they thinking as they're thinking? You know, why are they making this statement, this is what one should do? You know, one's own assumptions ought to be on the table as well. There are many uncertainties here, including the shape of the recovery. So here then one comes on to the question of choices, and in making a choice, you have to make sure you have the key trade-offs on the table. Do we move faster? What are the cost implications? What are the risk implications? I'm assuming here that the budget that you might have constructed in November or December is no longer relevant. You might have to consider going back to completely basic budgeting, just start off from zero, or you might have to have a short-term budget, or you might have a rolling forecast. You might not go for a midpoint, but look for a range of possibilities. You may want to revise your objectives as well as your timescales, and you may want to have new performance measures. Now, of course, you have lots of actions you could take to avert a crisis, a problem in your organization, and there are many different opportunities here for doing that. And again, I would look at what other people are doing, not just what you have on the table. In personal terms, if you're saying, what should I do now? Do make sure you have all the options on the table, not just the ones you might have thought of immediately. There may be other options, including delaying a decision, looking for evidence somewhere else, and so on. Finally, then, in terms of delivery, one I put here, this has to be feasible and credible. It's no use saying, I would like to do something. If you're relying on people, and you're relying on suppliers, and you're relying on customers, you have to check that what you've got is going to be feasible. So again, in personal terms, I would check those assumptions. And if you're involved, especially if you're running an organization, or if you're running a team, my belief is that communication is crucial to delivery. You have to make sure you're continuing to communicate with people. All right, those are the 6. I've got one other just element I want to mention before I finish, which is people talk to me a lot about, do I rely on gut feeling? Gut feeling is the immediate reaction you have to something. And I've got these 4 books on the screen there. Malcolm Gladwell, for example, thinks you should rely on your gut feeling, and Danny Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, thinks you shouldn't. I've got 4 questions to answer, which I believe you should think about before relying on your gut feeling. First of all, do you tend to act on your gut feel and then regret it? In other words, have you got a history of acting quickly and then regretting it? Secondly, have I got relevant experience for this? You're very unlikely to have relevant experience. Do you have the relevant data? You are not likely to have the relevant data in most cases. And are the stakes high? And my suggestion is, if the answer to any of these questions is yes, acting and then regretting, insufficient data, insufficient relevant experience, and high stakes, then you should probably at least wait before relying on your gut feel. All right, so in summary then, first of all, I suggest be aware of your filtering in reading and listening, consider what you trust and who you trust. Make sure you know what the assumptions are and on parallels drawn between this and other situations. Be aware of your feelings and beliefs and think about how much risk you're prepared to take. Ensure your options are fully explored and not artificially limited, and look at feasibility. Okay, that's all I want to say. I will stop sharing and be very happy now to take any questions or any issues that have come up. And I'd be delighted to do so. Professor, over to you.
Okay, so thank you very much for an interesting insight into the judgment issue. So I'm slowly gathering some questions here from the audience. Let me read the first one from John Montage. He really relates here the comment to social media.
Yeah.
His observation is that the social media suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah.
So what is your view on that effect?
Well, if he could remind me what the Dunning-Kruger effect is, I'd be very grateful, because I know I read about it at some stage, but I can't remember what it is now.
Let me, I think I briefly remember, I'm not a psychologist, but
Very
I
good.
briefly remember, so let me try to rephrase that question. So basically, the point is that there are many people who are not specialists, and they tend to present their opinion quite strongly.
Yeah.
And the specialists often kind of are a little bit withdrawing from the discussion and are afraid to make strong statements. So this kind of anomaly. So I don't know if someone wants to correct me. So maybe some better psychologists on that comment. So please do so. But I think, sir, you probably understand already the basic.
Fine. Very good. Okay, so the question here of experts and non-experts and what's involved here. What I think has been very clear from this crisis is that there are no real experts. Yeah, and maybe there are in Poland, but as far as I observe, even the scientists differ very much among themselves. I mean, should one be wearing a mask or not be wearing a mask? You know, this seems quite straightforward to me as a question, and the answer is the scientists don't agree on this, about whether one should wear masks or not. And so as far as I'm concerned, I would be very cautious. I mean, judgment to me means looking at the person who's making a statement and saying, do I believe this person? And in this crisis, it seems to me, there are very few completely reliable people. And therefore, I would be quite cautious about people who claim that they have all the answers to this. We haven't been through something like this before. You know what I mean? The expertise is not there. We have people's opinions, and people's opinions may be great. They may be really, really worthwhile. But actually, you know, they are opinions. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't know whether that answers the question. I am cautious about expertise, and I'm also cautious about opinions. You're mute. You're mute.
Okay, yeah, I'm back. So thank you very much. So yeah, with the technology, we have to be really careful here. So, you know, following that question, sometimes I ask myself as an economist, I ask myself the question, are we overcautious in the situation? So usually when we hear many strong opinion, we have a tendency maybe to forget about what we call in economics opportunity costs.
Yes.
So opportunity costs of the lockdown, which we have. So maybe you could expand a little bit more on that issue before I ask you some more questions, which I already see asked by many listeners.
Very good. Well, opportunity. I'm very happy with opportunity cost. Unlike the previous question, I'm very happy with opportunity cost.
That's right.
Okay. So yes, I think you're absolutely right. But this is a terrifying calculus, because the fact is, if we stop the lockdown too early, there is a danger of the second wave. There is a danger that many more people could die. You know, there is going to be some risk, whatever action we take. If we keep the lockdown going, we risk economic catastrophe. If we don't keep the lockdown going, we risk many more deaths. Now, I think, you know, I assume everybody on this call is over 21. You know, this is realistic. This is the fact. You know, there is going to be no costless option here. You know, I'm thankful I do not have to take this judgment. You know what I mean? That's for politicians to do, but it is a terrifying judgment in a way. And I you know, opportunity cost is absolutely what this choice is about. I agree.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Let's move on because the time is scarce. So I have the next question here. What advice would you give to your students who are trying to plan their careers in such a turbulent and uncertain environment? How this situation will affect, for example, job opportunities and internships? Yeah.
Well, I think my advice would be, do not rush to taking a decision, because coming back to my point about we know we will know more and more about the situation as time goes on. If you make a big decision now, in the light of so much uncertainty, you run a huge risk of making the wrong choice. It seems to me that if it's possible, you should not make a big choice right now. You know what I mean? Even in a month's time, we are going to know more about the effects of lockdowns and how long they'll last and what's going to happen to the economy. Now, of course, if you've got a job offer which is available right now, and it's a good job offer, then I don't see any reason to delay. That seems very, very straightforward to me. But if you are uncertain what to do, then my sense is it would be wise, bearing in mind how little we know, frankly, still, to wait, if possible, until you are better informed about what's happening. But you know, I'm not a magician. I can't foretell the future. You know what I mean? And neither can anybody else, as far as I can see. So my advice for the moment is wait. If possible, wait.
So managerial option to postpone the decision, right?
Well, but you see, I think the risk is huge at the moment. The risk is huge. I mean, who knows? If you're made a job offer today, who knows whether the firm will be in existence tomorrow? You know what I mean? Who knows? I mean, these are very, very difficult times. Even big organizations, you know, are now being bailed out by governments. You know what I mean? Who knows how many people they will have employed in September or whenever it is. So I'm not saying I'm proud that one should delay. I'm saying delay seems to me sensible in the circumstances.
Absolutely. Okay, here comes the next question. What is your opinion on Sweden, which, as you know, is going against the grain in the current situation? Maybe not only Sweden, I think Finland and Norway are in a somewhat similar situation. So, and maybe even Denmark to some degree.
Well, my expertise is definitely not in viruses. Okay, I am definitely not an expert in it. You will have to get somebody on this series who's really good at viruses to tell you authoritatively, but I am envious of Sweden. Of course I'm envious of Sweden. You know what I mean? I wish that we had the situation here where I could walk into cafes, you know what I mean? Like in the good old days 2 months ago. I'd love to be able to do that. But I mean, back to the question of the evidence, you know, as I say, we have sadly a control group of 180 countries with their experience. We learn all the time about this experience. If Sweden has got some magic formula, you know what I mean, I hope we will soon know about it and be able to follow it. But even the Swedes don't know how many people will die, you know, sadly. So I think I'm cautious. You see what I mean? I mean, it's difficult yet to draw a conclusion from Sweden. You know, we love to look at the evidence. If only we could make a very clear correlation back to the virus. So, but I'm afraid, as I say, you'll need an epidemiologist to do that.
Okay, so thank you. So here's the next question. That actually is a question related to some of your earlier comments. What are institutions we should believe while having such a huge infodemia?
Oh, yes. Oh, goodness me. Well, I say to people, despite the American president, I think the World Health Organization looks pretty authoritative to me. On the whole, I believe people who tell me they are not completely sure. I find this much more convincing. In the UK, we have several senior scientists who come onto the television regularly. And the people who sound very sure of themselves, to me, do not sound as credible as the people who say, look, I'm not sure, but this is the evidence which I have. So I believe one should believe people who are sufficiently humble about their lack of knowledge to carry some credibility. You know, I mean, they may be wrong, they may be wrong too, but at least they're not so sure they're right. No, anyway, things like the World Health Organization, I kind of believe them. You know?
Okay, good, thank you. So here comes the next question. What will be the most important skill or set of skills of a modern leader in the post-coronavirus era?
Oh, I think it's the same skills as leaders have always had, because leaders are good leaders in good times and bad times. I mean, that's, you know, no leader has a situation in which it's a smooth situation, everything goes beautifully, there are no problems. I mean, leadership is about also meeting the unexpected and knowing what to do in the unexpected. And leadership for me, you know, has many important elements to it. And one of the reasons I wrote about judgment is because it seems to me leaders need to have judgment. So, for example, the business of what they take in. If leaders are not listening to their people, if they're not listening to advice, that seems to me a very bad sign. A good leader will continue to listen to people, even though they're successful. A good leader will not build up major prejudices, you know, and beliefs. They will continue to question people, to make sure they understand what's going on. You know, they will make sure they have as much information as possible in order to make their decisions. So I don't think leadership will be any different after this virus to before it.
Okay, thank you. So here's another question of a different kind. So how is the British government helping entrepreneurs in the UK at this difficult time?
Well, they have got a number of schemes in which they've offered money to help various organizations. They've helped especially small businesses. They've offered loans on favorable terms to help people over the crisis time. So this is to help very small businesses just to survive the crisis, basically. So I think the government has done what it can to help individuals and companies, and I think they've been quite generous in what they've done. I am alarmed at the bill which is being assembled here, you know, and I'm alarmed at the thought that somebody has eventually got to pay this off, you know, so I'm a bit anxious about this. But I do think it's right for governments to do what they can to help people and businesses at this time. So what they've also offered, for example, to pay 80% of people's wages if they're let off up to a certain amount, to help, you know, keep the workforce available, even if a small business has not got a good cash flow. So forgive me, I don't know what the position is in Poland to know what it's so, but I think the government has actually behaved, you know, I've got no great complaints about the government. They may have acted rather slowly in face of the threat, but I think they have been reasonably generous to help people on the way.
Yeah. So regarding Polish situation, we have also an entire program of the government to help entrepreneurs and those who are losing jobs. So it's really a complex program. It seems to be very promising. But again, of course, as you know, as you have mentioned, all is about implementation. So we will see how is the implementation of the program going to work. So let's hope, let's be optimistic about that. Let's
be optimistic, I agree.
Okay, so here's the next question. I just read the question as well as the way it is written. Yeah. Do you think that thanks to this situation, people can understand the importance of using reliable sources of information? Is it rather panic that makes us not look at the reliability of information?
Yes, I think it is. I think there's evidence from the psychology literature to indicate that when people are panicking, they are not taking things in, you know, and that is a temptation, I think, just as much as it is to filter what one takes in, to take only the things in that are comforting to one. And I think in, you know, where people are in trouble and anxious, you know, there is a serious problem potentially about taking in enough information to be able to make the right choices. So yes, I agree with that. You know, I think that is a real problem.
Okay, so here's a question regarding methodology. So yes. Referring to the slide number 13. So yes. The slide number 13 in your presentation.
Yes.
So it is here's the guest.
I have slide 13. Yeah. Okay.
It seems that it is founded on well-developed understanding of what research method is. Yeah. One of the basis of every method is self-awareness of the limitations of one's approach. So here's the question: Should in our teaching we focus on, should we in our teaching focus on such fundamentals as our own biases?
Well, I think so. So one of the things which I advise people to do, if they're trying to say, how do I improve my judgment, is I think we all ought to be aware of what biases we have. Now, it's unreasonable to believe we won't have biases. We've all got biases. And if I can just give you an example. So as you mentioned, I was Dean of the London Business School for a number of years. And my colleagues, one day, one of my colleagues took me to one side and said, Andrew, look, could you be a little less cautious? All right. And I said, well, I said, I know I am rather cautious, but, you know, I don't want to jeopardize the future of the school. So I don't want to, you know, I am cautious about approaching things. And this person said to me, well, my belief is, and I was pleased to have this feedback, my belief is sometimes you are overcautious. So as a result of that, when something new came up and I didn't know what to do, and my immediate reaction might have been, oh, I think this looks too risky, I would stop myself and say, wait a minute, Andrew, maybe you're just being overcautious here. So, well, I would stop and think about it and think, you know, is my approach too immediately cautious about it? So that's an example of self-awareness, which I hope improve the decision-taking. Now, you know, that's something I was already aware of, but I was pleased that somebody pointed this out. And can I just say that I have been hugely benefited from the fact that people have given me feedback over the years. And that's enabled me, I hope, to do things better. So in terms of one's biases and one's feelings, as I say, it doesn't matter if one has them, but in approaching a problem, it's good to be aware of them. And one of the things which I mentioned in the article is at Amazon, for example, they encourage people to declare their biases before an item is discussed. So somebody will say, look, you know, I'm approaching this very cautiously because I think, you know, we've not done well in this area before. And so here's another proposal for us to do something which looks as if it could go wrong. And somebody else says, no, that's not adventurous enough. My feeling is we ought to go for it because we ought to show how adventurous we are. Now, it's good to have this on the table before you start the discussion, because then at least people know what's going on around the table. So yes, I agree with this idea. One should be aware of one's biases and feelings. I think it's terrific help, actually.
Yeah, thank you. So here comes the next question about the labor markets. I guess we talked about labor market a little bit already before, but now, yeah. What do you think about the labor market around the world after this crisis situation, and also what would be the impact on Brexit negotiations?
Oh God!
Okay, now you see the Brexit.
All right, Brexit again. Well, let me talk about the more general thing. I mean, the answer is nobody has a clue what's going to happen to labor markets. They have absolutely no idea. We have no precedent to go on this. You know, will there be billions of people out of work, or millions of people out of work, or nobody out of work? It could be almost anything. I mean, if it's a V-shaped recovery, as all the politicians, of course, hope, then everything will be back to normal by July. We will all be in the sunshine enjoying cafes outside. Nobody will have heard of coronavirus for several weeks, and it'll all be fine. And that's the optimistic scenario. The pessimistic scenario is we won't have a vaccine for 2 years. And for 2 years, we won't be able to do anything we did before. You know, we won't be able to travel many people in planes, or it'll cost a fortune to travel. You know, everybody's expenditure will be reduced. You know, income will have dropped by tens of %. You know, there'll be massive unemployment. There'll be serious economic crisis. So, you know, I am not, as I say, you are an economist, sir. Perhaps you can answer this question better than me. You know, I am not able to answer this question because I know I can't. As far as Brexit is concerned, I mean, let me declare my prejudices here, my feelings on the table firmly. I hate the idea of Brexit. It's a terrible idea as far as I'm concerned, you know, and I just don't want to even think about this. Whatever happens, Brexit is not going to make it better for the UK or indeed the rest of the European community. You know what I mean? Everybody is going to be worse off as far as I can see. You know, so I feel my feelings are so strong on this. I'm not reliable as somebody to give any evidence about it.
Okay, so thank you very much. So here is another question which expands the question about the labor market. So here someone asks about the changes, all other changes around the world. So do we expect, or do you expect any revolutionary changes in the world economy due to the current situation? So for example, change of world powers, some major social changes, or would they be positive, or maybe do you expect only negative ones?
No, I mean, it's possible. I'm a natural optimist. So, you know, I'm looking for anything bright out of this. I would love to have. And I mean, I just give you one example as a matter of interest. In our health service, the health service in the UK, just to give one example, resisted remote consultation. And it resisted a lot of actions in terms of using technology. Within a space of a month, they have gone dramatically to improving their use of technology. This was something which was, you know, people said, oh, it's not possible, we'll need years to do it. Well, miracles have happened because of the need to make the changes. But that's only on a very small scale. I do think there will be social changes. I do think there will be political changes. You know, and I'm slightly worried about many of these because it seems to me, you know, that these could not be cheerful. I mean, I would love to have the idea that everybody feels we're all in this together. We will all collaborate more than before. We will do what we can more together. I would love to believe this, but I am anxious about some of the things which I see coming. I mean, I don't even want to think about them. I'm so concerned about them. You know what I mean? At the moment, of course, we're all just surviving from day to day. What do we do? You know, how many people died today? Are we going to get out of the lockdown in 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time? And I think it's, you know, to keep one's sanity, I'm looking at the short term. You know what I mean? The long term, it seems to me, some worries there.
That's right. Thank you. So another question about the information. So how to filter the information, and especially when we face interdisciplinary knowledge that we need. So we need knowledge of medicine, biotechnology, maybe some other sciences. So how to use the proper judgment here?
Well, here I am more cheerful because my sense is that the stakes are so enormous here. You know, what is involved is so enormous for all of us in terms of our prosperity, in terms of our lives. I mean, human ingenuity is remarkable. And, you know, if you think about the number of people who have a big incentive to start having breakthroughs, then my assumption is that interdisciplinary work, which is normally difficult, will suddenly come much more to the fore. People will be willing to collaborate with other people. They will do things that they have never thought of doing before. And I'm actually quite cheerful about that because I believe that if the amount of resources which are going to be thrown at this problem is huge. I say everybody has an incentive to find a vaccine. Everybody has an incentive to find a way to live together, you know, and not to have 2 meters permanently from anybody else all the time. So I hope, therefore, that in that case, there will be interdisciplinary work of a kind which there wouldn't be in normal times.
Okay. So what would be, according to your prediction, the turning point to close the lockdown? And when will economy be more important than human life? So I just quote.
Oh, well, there you are.
Okay.
You know, there's an equation. There's an equation I'm not going to go into. You know, but in terms of I mean, I guess what will happen is that through the course of this month and next month, we'll gradually see the restrictions being lifted, so that within 6 weeks, we will have a very good idea of whether releasing a lockdown is actually going to be okay. Because assuming the incubation period is 2 weeks, we will have enough experience in 6 weeks to see, can we carry on okay? Is this going to be all right? Or have we got to go much more slowly? So this comes back to my point about the choices one makes. You know, if by the middle of June, we are in a much better position to make a choice about a job or a contract or whatever it is, then it seems to me better to wait till the middle of June to do it if we possibly can. But that is, look, I'm a citizen like everybody else. I'm no better informed than anybody else on this. So I hope, though, by the middle of June, we will have a much better idea of how quickly this will all unravel. I hope.
Yeah, thank you. So we have lots of questions coming up here, but I guess the time is getting scarce. I have to be a little bit selective here.
Okay, fine.
So here's another question. Are you of opinion that European Union will survive this crisis?
Oh, yes.
So it is a statement of someone that EU totally failed. So I mean, I'm quoting someone.
Sure.
EU totally failed. I'm asking this question to you as fast as I know, you've been a Remainer and against Brexit. Okay.
True. That is absolutely true. I'm a Remainer and I'm still against Brexit, even though we've already had Brexit. So anyway, so yes, I do think the European Union will survive. I mean, I think the forces, you know, which bring it together are very strong. And I very much hope that it does survive. I think, look, the European Union will evolve. I mean, like any other institution, it will not be exactly the same institution after this virus as it was before. And I'm sure there are strains, as we already see, in terms of the economic forces between some countries and other countries, as there was during the debt crisis. But my sense is that, I mean, there is so much, you know, well, you would expect me to say this. I believe there is so much to gain by countries being together that I don't see it breaking up or anything like that. I mean, you could have certain countries might decide, like Britain, to go for particular reasons, but I don't see it. I don't see why they would. Anyway, that's my personal view.
Okay, so here comes the question from your favorite Wooch.
Okay.
So, and the question is about artificial intelligence. So
yes.
How do you see the role of the artificial intelligence as a tool to prepare maybe objective prediction of the situation after the crisis, after the epidemic?
Okay, well, one of the things that I'm working on now is the relationship between artificial intelligence and human judgment. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to, I hope to produce in 3 or 4 months' time, an article which tries to answer the question, can a machine exercise judgment? So this for me is an absolutely fascinating issue. I think there are considerable limitations about artificial intelligence. Even, I mean, if we're looking at the frontiers of what's possible, there are limitations. I've done a lot of work in medicine, for example, and it's quite clear that artificial intelligence is very good at predicting certain kinds of illnesses and analyzing certain kinds of illnesses, and not at all good on others. And that gives an illustration of the fact that artificial intelligence is not going to be the universal answer to everything. It will give us huge additional capabilities in certain areas, but I don't think it's going to, you know, produce the kind of answers which, as it were, its enthusiasts say it's going to, in terms of replacing a lot of human judgment. Human judgment is pretty unique, and my belief is that a lot of the more complicated judgments we have to make, and most of the important ones are complicated, are going to remain with human beings.
Okay, thank you very much. So here's another question regarding our behavior. So how do you think this situation will change our behavior towards consumption? And will it make us more appreciative of what we have?
Well, I think that's perhaps a more cheerful aspect of it. Maybe it will make us appreciative of what we've got. Maybe, you know, if we look back 2 months, we didn't realize how fortunate we were just to be able to walk around and do normal kinds of things and get on a plane or, you know, travel in a normal kind of way. Yes, I think the indications are from any crisis of this kind. I mean, a war would be, you know, an even worse example. You know, people then do have different attitudes to things like consumption, because, you know, the whole way in which they regard, as it were, their relationship with the world is likely to change. And, you know, if I look, for example, at our own Prime Minister, who was ill with coronavirus, you know, I mean, everybody is watching to see, has he been changed by the experience of going through this? My assumption is that we will think about things differently. Now, if it's all over by July, and if we're all out doing our normal things by July, then it probably won't have a lasting effect. But on the reasonable assumption, it will take quite a lot longer than that to get back to normal. My assumption is it will have an effect on consumption, yes.
Okay, so here one of the guests here wants to come back to some of the previous questions. So the suggestion to hold with decisions seems to be prevalent from your presentation. So you suggested that maybe to postpone some decisions until we know more. However, it seems that sometimes it's those who dare to move forward earlier win, right? So I guess the question here is, you know, what would be your suggestion how to identify a true opportunity worth taking a risk? So of course, without any clear and very strict instructions, but maybe some clues.
Yeah. Well, look, you know, it's much more exciting to say, yes, go for it. You know, take the risk, you know, be first. Absolutely. You know, that's terrific. I've got no problems with that at all. And indeed, that may be a very good thing to do. But there's a 4-letter word here, and it's risk. All right. The answer is, how much risk are you prepared to take? And I just give a straight example. The stock market plunged 30%. All right. So, and then it's gone up a little bit now. All right. So, is this a wonderful opportunity to buy cheap stocks? Or is this absolutely the moment to say, people have no idea about what's going to happen. It's going to go much lower later. So again, you know, the idea of being swept by emotion is wonderful. You get a terrific adrenaline rush to start with, and it may come off. It may come off. But all one has to do is to understand how much risk one is taking. And for example, if it's a minor risk, I mean, I can tell you now, when the stock market went down, I thought, this looks very low. So I bought a few shares. I can afford to lose the money, all right? I'm not going to put my entire wealth into the stock market now, you know, because I'm not prepared to take the risk. So risk is everything. If the answer is, therefore, if you feel very, very bullish, if you feel you want to take the risk, then good luck is all I can say. Fantastic. That's wonderful. And may you succeed, because you may be the one that does, but, you know, then I think you've got your assessment of your risk. That's all that matters.
Okay, thank you. So here's another kind of general question about the minimum remuneration. So are you in favor of the idea of minimum remuneration granted by law to everyone as sort of a security against possible social disturbances? So problems with growing poverty, problems in the labor market. So Hayek, so von Hayek, right, has that idea as well.
Well, I think you ought to answer this question, not me. I think this is you. I'm sure you're much better qualified to answer this question about minimum incomes. I haven't followed the literature on minimum incomes to know, I can see that it's an attractive idea, and I can see particularly it's an attractive idea to safeguard people who, you know, may otherwise be extremely poor or very, you know, very much in terms of the very, very low end of the labor market. But I haven't looked at the literature to be able to say confidently, look, I think this is a great idea. I would like to think it's an idea that ought to be thought about, but I say, I'm sure you're better able to answer this question than me. Please don't hesitate.
Okay, so no, honestly speaking, I think I'm in favor of such a solution. But the problem is that, you know, with the technological developments, I think that having a job at some point in the societies will be sort of an option for people.
Yeah.
So to have a job, right? Because not everybody can have a job, and at least the job they would like to have.
Sure.
So to some extent, maybe it will be an option, but maybe also a privilege for some people to have a job. So we will have to solve a problem to people who will not be lucky enough to have a job. So given some security level, would be probably a nice solution. But again, I'm not a socialist, but it sounds like a socialist state. So let's not start this discussion, maybe too much. So
Okay.
just to
Well, there you are. I thought you'd give a better answer than me. That's fine. I'm very happy with that.
Okay, good. So let's maybe take one more question here. So I have many more questions, but maybe I'll try to be selective here. Okay. So here is a question regarding changes in technology. Do you think that it can be said that thanks to the pandemic, technology development has increased significantly in a short period of time?
Sorry, I missed that one.
Thanks to the pandemic, technology development has increased significantly in a short period of time.
Well, I mean, the fact that here we are, we've got this, you know, here we are together on Zoom, as it were, and I don't think 2 months ago we would have thought we would be together on Zoom, that life would have gone like this. But I think technology is a much wider issue than this, obviously. I mean, we're talking here about personal communications. I mean, this is such a big subject in terms of technology. The worry will be that a lot of technological development will be slowed down by this, because especially if firms cut their research and development because they've got financial troubles, then it could be that technology in many areas slows, doesn't increase, you know. But anyway, the rate of technology increase is never smooth. I mean, it's always by, you know, it's always you know, usually it's often by big bounds rather than incrementally. But as far as this is concerned, you know, my assumption here is that on balance, reduced incomes will mean slowing of technological developments. Sorry not to be optimistic.
Yeah, that's understood. So another question regarding organization of firms, so organizational structures. So will the epidemic contribute to a change in the organizational structures of enterprises? Will these structures flatten? So that's the question.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, but I don't think it will be necessarily linked to this. I mean, I see the trends in the workforce and in the way in which organizations are structured as being much more to do with technology more generally rather than the virus. And I think there is then the question, particularly of a notion of hollowing out organizations, you know, if technology makes things possible so that you don't necessarily need quite so many tiers inside an organization. So I do think then there is an argument for saying, yes, that is likely to be a trend and there's likely to be a flattening. I would agree with that as a more general phenomenon. Yeah.
Okay, so here's one more question about biases that we talked about. So whether artificial intelligence will be bias free. What is your judgment here?
No. I mean, the work I've done on artificial intelligence indicates to me that there is a real issue about training data, which goes into artificial intelligence, as well as programming, but in particular training data and the way in which programmers program the machine and then use the training data in order to get the machine to do certain things afterwards. And I think there's a lot of anxiety about the possibility that people who are involved in setting up the artificial intelligence frameworks will transfer their biases into the programs. So definitely not bias free, I'm afraid.
Yeah. So no, I checked my time and I see it's already
Okay.
10 p.m.
Fine.
in Warsaw, so I think we should be closing down here. So I'm really happy that we could have this meeting with you, that you could answer so many questions here.
Very pleased to.
There are still many questions left, but we will hope to send you maybe some of those questions.
No problem.
So thank you very much, sir, for your really very nice, enlightening discussion and your insight into the problems. So I'm really happy. So I hope we can maybe at some other point in time meet together and also discuss other issues. So we'll be actually London Business School is actually a partner of Warsaw School of Economics. So we've been partners for many years. So I hope we should strengthen those ties and yeah, and put them at a higher level. Yeah. So thank you very much. I'm now turning to the host of this webinar.
Okay, sirs, thank you very much. It was really great opportunity to hear one of the best presentation in my life. And I would like to say that Professor Prokop is a great, really great moderator of questions. And
I had the best speaker here, so I had no problem to run this. So
yeah, of course. But I'm really surprised about the quality of questions, and I knew that Sir Andrew Likierman will be a great speaker, but questions were great and moderation was absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm sure that we are in good hand, and we had two best business schools in England and in Poland. So it was really great, and I hope that our future presentations will be at the same level, but it is very hard to have it. Of course, I would like to say to Professor Likierman, thank you very much. And it's like my family said, next year in Łódź, yeah?
I'd say, dziękuję bardzo.
We'll see. I hope. Really, it was great. Really great material. So I've heard that we had a problem with audio with in our presentation, in our trailer, but I would like to say that it was my fault, because as my my son said, I'm a boomer. Okay, boomer, he said all the time. So now I know how to start the trailer once again with audio. And professors, thank you very much. It was a great pleasure. It was an honor to have you here. And I would like to show three more links, because it's quite important. First of them is weinnovators-club, and please, you are invited to see what people will be next for presentation. ARPPL, it's our company, state-owned company, industrial development agency. We, Pavel and me, we are working there, and we are very happy of it, that we can help people to share knowledge. And Sieć Otwartych Innowacji, so Open Innovation Network, is our grant European money for grants for transfer technology. So thank you very much. And now I will show the film, I hope with music, really. So see you next time. And Professor, you are invited for next our meetings with other people. Maybe you can ask them for very important question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And now I'm looking for film. I optimize and share computer share. See ya.